Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of January 15th, 2025. Hope you're checking us out on Rocky's YouTube channel. Comic Space Boom exclamation point is where you can find us every week, usually early on Wednesday. This one's coming out a little later on Wednesday due to some family things. I thought it was a pretty solid week. I am disappointed that 3 of the books from last week got pushed to this week, which made only like 8 books last week and 13 books this week. Would have been almost even. Um, yeah, anything starts getting over 10, it feels a little bloated, and it kind of hurts my enjoyment of the books because I'm like, oh man, how many books do I have to read? So anyway, overall, pretty solid week. Interestingly enough, Rocky and I have almost the exact same top 5, but we'll talk about 10 of the books in detail, and a few of the ones that are sorted toward the bottom we'll kind of gloss over. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a pretty good week. Yeah, what'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess since our top fives are very similar, I mean, I guess we could argue uh, on the pessimistic side that it could have been maybe a little better week, but still, there's still a lot. All of these titles have something to say, and it's still feeling. I remember how I was feeling last year at this time, and it's still just overall feeling better about where DC is at, and notwithstanding some comic book news that we got about Diamond and what have you. There's still some really great comic book stories out there, and we can talk about other publishing companies, but we're talking about DC, and DC is still doing a pretty damn good job overall, in my view.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't familiar, so Diamond, they're one of the distributors. They used to be the only distributor of comics, and there are stories of them not exactly pinching pennies, as it were, but they had the monopoly, so I guess they didn't need to worry about it. Well, now they've declared bankruptcy. Now that they have some competition, but not necessarily going out of business. More of just, hey, give us time to get back on our feet and stabilize our finances. So we'll see. There's some people that think they will go the way of the dodo, but I guess it remains to be seen if they will or not. Luckily, some of these other distributors have stepped up in their absence and have been doing a pretty good job. They're not without their own issues, obviously. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off. First book that we're going to talk about. I don't think it's in either of our, yeah, not in either of our list. And this was one of the ones that was supposed to come out last week. But it's Black Lightning, issue number 3 from writer Brandon Thomas, art by Fico Ossio, colors by Ulysses Areola, letters by Lucas Catoni. I thought the art was pretty solid, but mostly why this didn't make my list, because it's been pretty good up till this point. Um, it just, there's behavior by the Trinity that just felt out of character to me, except maybe for Batman. But yeah, the Trinity is basically telling Black Lightning how to raise his daughter, which it just felt wildly out of character. So this one really fell down for me. So anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add,
Well, just
real
that
quick, Chuck.
it's just that I'm not really. There is some character work here between Black Lightning and his family. It does feel a little bit forced, though, the forced drama with the Trinity and the Justice League and what have you. And even I'm not quite feeling the. I'm not sure I'm even understanding or quite relating to the slightly dysfunctional relationship between Black Lightning and his daughters. So it just feels it doesn't quite it feels a little bit like it's a kind of tropey to me, and I'm not quite feeling it. And Black Lightning sort of losing it a bit at the end there didn't quite feel right. But I mean, there's a story to be told here, and I still like the idea of it's still premised on the idea that there's a superpowers are being screwed up, and there's a mix up with the power sets of various people, and so it's still carrying on that theme. And for Black Lightning fans, I can see it has an appeal. And you're absolutely right. Fico Ossio's art is really good, and the attention to detail in the scenes and the action scenes is absolutely excellent. So it does have some merit there, no question.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, up next we have Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum. This is another one of the books that was supposed to come out last week, got moved to this week. Written by Jeremy Adams, art is by V. Ken Marion, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. We had a conversation with Jeremy about this last week. There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, the art by V. Ken Marion's amazing. Like even at that title page where Nathan Broom Sorrow shows up for the first time, that splash page just looks amazing. There's aspects of Guy Gardner here that harken back to his days as a police officer. He's not just the dumb, I don't want to say jock, but he's always portrayed as being kind of unintelligent. Um, and Jeremy kind of leans back into the fact that Guy's actually a pretty smart person. He investigated crimes in the past and what have you. It's sort of in the JLI era, the Bwahaha era of the Justice League, where he kind of got this um, sort of reputation as a meathead, and he's played for comedic effect a lot of times. And there's nothing wrong with that portrayal of him per se, but it does minimize him to some extent. And even I had forgotten. I'm so used to that characterization of Guy, I'd forgotten that he's a little bit more than that. So it's pretty interesting. We did see in some of the backups for Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern run some Guy stories, and it was mentioned that he had the Book of Oa kind of in the back of his closet of all places.
Yeah.
And one of the really cool things that new concepts that Jeremy Adams is introducing here, because we've talked before about how Jeremy's really great at expanding the mythos, and that's really important when it's a property that's been around as long as Green Lantern. Like, how do you tell new stories, exciting stories, tread ground that hasn't been kind of tread before? So he's come up with this idea that there's an artifact that allows you to you look through this artifact to read the Book of Oa, and it allows you to read the Book of Oa for each different spectrum. So, it's always been this idea that the Book of Oa, named after the planet Oa, which was always the home of the Guardians of the Universe, which, was kind of in charge of the Green Lantern Corps, or oversaw them or whatever. Um, and so it was really a book that talked about the green willpower, the green spectrum as opposed to all the rest. Well, it turns out there's this artifact that you can look through, and you can read the Book of Oa as if it's for the red spectrum or the yellow spectrum or blue or any of the other ones, right? So the book is actually written in 7 different ways, not just one. So that is such a really cool idea. And on top of that, we know at the end of the Civil Core, the fight with Theranos and everything that went on with that, the Revenant Queen and all that, that the Guardians of the Universe have returned. However, they're not exactly the same as they were before. They don't necessarily have all the knowledge. They're trying to remember. They're a little different, but they're also, each of them sort of have a proclivity to one spectrum or another. And that's shown here really for the first time when we see a couple Guardians show up on the page. One has the blue symbol of hope, another has the red symbol of rage. So that's interesting as well. Not to mention the fact that the whole emotional spectrum is fractured right now, thus the name of the special, where anybody can access the powers of the spectrum with, you don't even have to have a ring. And not only the spectrums that we've seen before, like the ones I mentioned, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, but also other aspects like the gray spectrum, which is what Nathan Broom is when we start talking about sorrow and what does that mean and all that. And so there's a lot coming. This special leads into Green Lantern 19 in a real strong way, where we're going to see a big bad that hasn't shown up a lot over the years. Jeremy has used him in the past. He showed up on the final page of, I think it was Green Lantern 18, and we were kind of wondering who he was. I know Jeff Johns used him, back in the day as well, not extensively. But he, I think it was like Justice League, I want to say like 83, like way back, where he's actually on the cover, but he looks a little different because he's wearing a robe and he's holding these scales and what have you. But he looks very different. But he is going to be putting together kind of a new form of the Dark Stars, and I would also expect to see him in perhaps in the pages of Green Lantern Corps as well. So again, we saw him on the final page of of Green Lantern 18, and he's going to be showing up again. I'm trying to remember
Oh,
uh,
Starheart,
what is
Starheart, Starbreaker,
Star. Yeah, yeah, Starbreaker. Yeah,
Starbreaker.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. He'll be showing up more and more, and what he has to do and how he's manipulating and taking advantage of the broken spectrum. We'll have to see, but I thought this was fantastic. Jeremy's story continues to expand in scope and feel just amazing. So yeah, this was great. This was awesome. The whole idea of different versions of the Book of O, I thought that was really, really inspired. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out in the long run. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about it. On the one hand, if I'm being critical, it seems extremely vague that now anyone randomly, there's going to be random people throughout the universe that are going to suddenly manifest powers along the lines of the emotional spectrum, and that there's no central power battery. It's not governed by a central power battery, so it's just sort of random and archaic, and but yet it has a cool factor to it. It embodies a sense of chaos. There's a chaos to it that I like with the emotional spectrum, and it actually makes the Green Lanterns more special now because it's their willpower, as it's stated very specifically. I like the idea that, well, the Green Lanterns are the most powerful, arguably, on the spectrum, because in order to control your emotions, you require willpower. So it makes sense that maybe the green, the willpower aspect, might in fact be the most important of all of them, because you need willpower to kind of sort of, bring in all the emotions and hold them in check. And so I like the way, sort of thematically, in terms of the metaphor of exploring that, because of the chaotic nature of emotions, and what keeps emotions in check: willpower. And so I sort of like that, and then having all these different book of owers for each of the emotional spectrums. And of course, this opens up the gambit for what's in each of the books. What secrets are there to be explored. And thankfully, just the way that Jeremy Adams has introduced all of this, it's just opening up a can of worms in all the best possible ways. And I want to give a shout out to Vikan Marion's art is excellent. I love the portrayal of Sorrow here, his attack on Guy Gardner, and I. Hal Jordan. Some of the double page spreads are excellent, and the battle sequence, just great stuff. Great stuff. Once again, I mean, probably Green Lantern's near the top of the list for every week it comes out.
Yeah, I should mention. I want to be clear from my. I'm pretty sure this is how it works. I don't know if Jeremy has come out explicitly and said so, or maybe he did, and I just don't remember. But yeah, anybody can manifest because there's not a central battery for any of the other spectrums. But you have to feel that emotion pretty intensely, right? So it's not just somebody that oh man, I stubbed my toe, I'm mad, I'm going to become a Red Lantern. Like you have to
Yeah,
be,
yeah,
like really, which makes sense, right? Like we saw Nathan Broom. Literally, the engagement ring that he had for Carol turned into his ring of sorrow because he was devastated to be left at the altar. He was very sorrowful. But the other aspect of this, and we'll see this a little bit in Green Lantern 18 or 19 rather, whatever the next issue that comes out, 19 I think, um, is like he's wielding the sorrow, the spectrum of sorrow, but it's painful for him. He doesn't necessarily want to be the sorrow lantern. It's painful. So you wonder if some of these other people without an actual ring, because I mean in his case he does have a ring, but again there's no battery to kind of relegate, make sure you don't get too much power. So if
hmm
you, like, let's say you're somebody who loves deeply and you just manifest the violet spectrum, right? So you're like a star sapphire. Will you just be falling in love with everybody because even though you don't have a ring, you're so overcome with it, you're just like, oh man, I love hot dogs, I love that actual
yeah.
dog, I love this, my garbage man, I love whatever. We'll have to
But
wait and see,
open
but
open questions I have, though, is, like, take for example, take a genocide happening anywhere on any planet in the galaxy. Well, any genocide is going to have people that are angry, that have loss and sorrow, and I mean literally. I mean, how do you judge one sorrow, one atrocity, one emotion, one feeling of hatred over another one, uh, over trillions of lives throughout the universe? That's the question I have. And how on earth does that, this wandering emotional spectrum, how does it pick and choose without a central battery, or without some governing? central
It might be
mind
who's ever
that's
feeling it most intensely. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody. So, yeah, in that case, it might just be okay. Whoever the person is, or two or three people that feel it, the anger most intensely. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see, or we'll have to bug Jeremy to get him to tell us.
yeah.
All right, let's move on. Up next, we have Action Comics number 1082. Time for John Ridley to take over the writing duties. The art is by Anaki Miranda, colors by Eva De La Cruz, and letters by Dave Sharp. This, I think, is actually, yeah, this is my lowest rated book of the week. I really didn't care for this too much, but and it's not wouldn't necessarily be in Rocky's top five either. But we are going to talk about it in a little more depth. All I'm going to say is I just didn't care for the rendition of Superman that we got here from Miranda. I thought he looked way too angry. I'm not used to seeing a Superman that angry. Um, I did like the portrayal actually that Miranda gave to Clark. I thought he looked pretty interesting, and also the story really has a crime noirish feel, um, much more than I expected. Um, and kind of in a way that Bendis when he did the whole crime noir Superman thing, but this feels a little more natural. Um, but yeah, it was mostly that arc that kind of threw me off. I just thought that he looked really strange. So yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But what do you have to add, Rocky?
Well, it's interesting that John really wrote this. He's doing his best to try to address a serious issue and have an adult conversation about it through the character of Clark Kent and Lois Lane as they're sort of recounting the events of the presumably the previous 2 or 3 days, where basically this follows from a theme that Joshua Williamson sort of explored in Superman, the idea that Superman really goes out of his way to try to rehabilitate his villains, and he always wants to give them a chance. He wants to do that for the Phantom Zone criminals. He wants to, in order they can even attain parole at some point from the Phantom Zone, and he wants his position regarding the Parasite, even Luthor. Superman's always willing to give somebody a chance, but this is a story that John Ridley is addressing where it's not always going to be a success story. Sometimes when you try to help people, you fail, and they assume the worst parts of their nature, and that's Major Disaster. Major Disaster has been an anti-hero at times. He has helped heroes at times, but he killed somebody. He's still, at the end of the day, he embraced his devilish side, and he, frankly, he failed, and it's sort of like a bad addict. Uh, what doesn't uh, John really tries to sort of create this story around this idea, but at the end of the day, all it is just Clark Kent getting a wake up call and sort of a bitch slap by Lois, and indirectly, I almost feel like reaching into the pages myself and giving him a slap, saying, "Well, look, man. I mean, is this really a surprise? Supervillains are going to supervillain. I mean, this is not surprising. And they tell you they're going to rehabilitate, and they don't. Well, is this really surprising?" And then he interviews all of some of Major Disaster's friends or his cohorts, and they all say the same thing, which isn't really surprising. That, well, none of them are surprised. So why is Superman? But I get it. It sort of reinforces the fact that Clark Kent, Superman, he does care, and it does end on an interesting note that somebody attacks Clark Kent with a weapon that appears to be able to affect him, even and to affect him and minimize his invulnerability. So it's interesting, but it's nothing really new, and not saying anything new. Uh, but I'm curious to see where it might go, given how it ended.
What do you think of the art?
Ah, sorry. Yes, the art. I like the art. I thought it was really good. I thought it was. You mentioned the tone of it in a way. It does sort of have a crime noir feel. It does display Superman looking very angry and a little bit, where he's very upset. And I actually don't mind that. I'm not a, I'm all for Superman being hopeful, but this notion that Superman can't be pissed off or can't have a bad day or can't be disappointed with somebody who he used to work with, who he thought was rehabilitated, and he comes upon them and they've killed somebody. He can't be upset. He can't look angry and have red eyes and use his heat vision and be aggressive. Nonsense. He's not God. He's not an avatar. He's not the Messiah. He's not the second coming. He's Superman, but he's also a man. And so I like the fact that John Ridley's very good at that. He humanizes his characters, and he's not afraid of doing that with Superman. So, and I actually like that. And I think the art reinforces that in a way very effectively, and in particular, even Clark Kent's angst in his discussions with Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind that he was angry. It just he looked strange when he was angry. Like he didn't he didn't look it didn't look right. Especially the page. Yeah, that page right there that you like that bottom panel, if you will, it's kind of inset or whatever. But when he's flying out towards us, like he just it doesn't look like it's rendered. I don't know if it's the anatomy that looks off, or maybe it's a foreshortening. It doesn't look right. It just looks strange to me. But maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Well, no, I think you're
Anyway,
right.
let's
It just goes to show you how often, how few times we actually see a pissed off Superman. Really.
yeah yeah
uh,
yeah. There's other times where he's angry, where yeah, it just looks like he's angry, and you get it. Like he trusted Major Disaster. He vouched for him, and Major Disaster killed somebody. So yeah, yeah, he has every right to be upset. But that's the other part of it. Like he gets mad. He's so Superman. He gets mad, but then at Major Disaster. But then he's also kind of mad at himself for getting mad. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't let
yeah.
himself. I'm letting myself down by getting angry because it's a negative emotion, and I'm Superman and I should be above that. No, dude. Like you said, you're not a god. You're Superman. So anyway, uh, next up we have Jenny Sparks, number 6. Like a Miracle. Tom King is the writer. Jeff Spokes does the art and the colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. Um, it's interesting. This has been at times. This has felt like a really big story, especially when you talk about the level of Captain Adam's powers. Um, but with what's happening here, with Jenny kind of realizing her own limitations in a way in this story, and the way she's confronting Captain Adam, and almost kind of appealing to his heroic nature, like, hey, these are the things you've done, these are the things you've survived or whatever. All of a sudden the story's starting to feel kind of intimate. It started out as kind of a feeling like it was going to be a traditional superhero story, even though we knew it wasn't because it was Tom King. And then it totally shifted with Captain Adam being out of control, and it really expanded and felt like it was this big story with Jenny's level of power and Captain Adam's level of power, and kind of a referendum on who keeps an eye on these superheroes, who's the one that needs to make sure they don't spin out of control. Not so different from what Amanda Waller was saying in Absolute Power. And now all of a sudden with this issue, as we're heading down toward the end, it's starting to feel more intimate, more personal, rather than kind of the larger themes of the story. So I thought that was interesting. But as it has been throughout, the color work and the line work from Jeff Spokes has been outstanding. He's not a really prolific um, artist, and I don't think he's particularly fast. I think it takes a while for him, and it makes sense based on the level of detail and the fact that he colors his own work and what have you. So I've seen him do mini series now and then, like he's done stuff over at Top Cow, but he hasn't done really high profile. This is probably the most high profile project he's done. Um, I think he deserves. I say all that to say I think he deserves more recognition for his art, because I think he's really talented. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this?
It continues to elude me what Tom King's trying to do here, and I want to be clear. I give Tom King's high compliments on some of his works, and we've talked about them before. I won't repeat myself. And sometimes when often I find that I can get behind his dialogue where he has. He has these sort of conversations between third party and fourth and fifth party characters on the and here he's trying to I think he's trying to say something with all these ancillary characters in the bar commenting about their mundane lives. And I think we're, as readers, are we supposed to juxtapose that against the extraordinary powers of Captain Adam, these godlike powers? And then Jenny Sparks in this issue is expressing her frustration at Captain Adam, saying, "Look, I was the spirit of the 21st, I was the spirit of the 20th century, and I had all this power, and I failed, and I realized I couldn't change anything, and I'm back in the 21st, and nothing has changed. And here you are, Captain Adam. You have the ability to actually do something useful, and you're squandering it, and you're pathetic, and you're a loser, and you're failing. You got to be better than this." And I guess maybe that's the point. I guess I just feel that this is sort of a really long way of maybe getting to that point, quite frankly. But he does have something to say, and it ends on a cliffhanger. I don't really know. I don't know. Captain Adam seems to be creating some sort of white void that they're going to go into, and at some point, I don't know exactly what Tom King will want to say in the final issue here, but I think in many ways I appreciated Jenny Sparks' frustration and why she's frustrated because she feels like a failure given how the 20th century ended and what it's led to in the 21st. So I can relate to Jenny. I can understand Jenny Sparks there. Maybe that's the most important thing. After all, it is called Jenny Sparks. It's not a Captain Adam series. It's a Jenny Sparks series. So in that respect, I can see Jenny Sparks' frustrations. Although I'm not really sure what makes her think that Captain Adam has these godlike powers. I'm not sure what he could do to change the world. Really. I mean, I guess he could cure everyone of cancer. I suppose he could do that. Maybe that's what she's talking about. But then she could make the same argument for for Superman and a whole slew of others. But in any event, it's okay. But to me, it's just it's a little bit too decompressed for my liking.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think you're spot on with what King is trying to say. Yeah, he's taken a while to get there, but one of the things that I don't know that I ever in my whole life have used the word succinct to describe a Tom King story. That's just
Fair
not
enough.
one
Yeah.
of his. Yeah, that's not one of the attributes I would give to his storytelling style, which is fine. Um, so yeah, that is interesting. And then as far as what what expectations Jenny has, that's the other part of this that's so interesting, right? Like Captain Adam is Doctor Manhattan, or I should flip that back around. Like Doctor Manhattan is this sort of almost omniscient being um, in Alan Moore's Watchmen, and he's based on Captain Adam. And then when they wanted to redo Captain Adam with the New 52, they told J.T. Kroll and Freddie Williams Jr., yeah, base him on Doctor Manhattan. So you're basing Captain Adam, the post New 52 Captain Adam, on Dr. Manhattan, who's based on Captain Adam. So you're basing him on himself in a lot of ways, which I find to be interesting. But what's even more interesting than that is when you think about Captain Adam as a character and what his powers are, it's been the way that he's been written and portrayed in DC Comics since he came over after DC bought the Charlton characters, and the first time that Captain Adam showed up in a DC book was actually in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so he's always been portrayed as somebody who can fly and who has these energy based powers. He can shoot energy blasts from his hands and what have you. But he's never really been portrayed as somebody who can like manipulate matter, um, kind of like Firestorm or what have you, or more specifically like Doctor Manhattan. Like that's the reason we know Doctor Manhattan to be so powerful, because he literally can manipulate kind of energy or matter on a molecular scale. So he could bring somebody back to life, or make somebody functionally immortal by making their molecules never degrade, and that sort of thing. Like a really really powerful guy. Theoretically, with what we know of Captain Adam's powers, being able to tap into the quantum field or what have you, he really should be that powerful as well. He should be able to disintegrate somebody, reintegrate somebody, change, one element into another. He should be way more powerful than he's ever been portrayed as before. I don't know why nobody's ever really leaned into that. What they've more leaned into him as, oh, he's this sort of human nuclear reactor, and so in that way he's dangerous or what have you. It's kind of interesting actually when you think about the way that DC has used Captain Adam over the years. So I think that's a little bit what Tom King is saying here, and through Jenny Sparks, by saying, yeah, you could do a lot more than you're doing. He could fly around and turn all the nuclear missiles or bombs or whatever into turn them into flowers or oxygen or whatever, right? He could be cleaning up pollution. He could be, stopping climate shift by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Like so many different things he could be doing, and he chooses not to. or he's just not aware, or what have you. But this is a Captain Atom that does seem a little more self-aware of how powerful he is. I mean, he's telling everybody, I'm a god. I'm a god. I mean, he kind of is. If you want to talk about, creating life and having mastery over life and death and that sort of thing. So, yeah, where exactly we're going, we'll have to wait and see. I know people were disappointed. I was disappointed as well that Tom didn't come on for our Christmas episode, but hopefully we're going to have him on sometime early in this year. And when we do, we'll talk about Jenny Sparks and get his a little more of his insight on what the story is about. All right, up next we have Milestone Universe: The Shadow Cabinet, number 3 from writer Joseph P. Illidge, Daryl Banks, Adagwin Ilhan, and Dennis Cohen on art. Prentice Rollins inks some of the pages. Christopher Sotomayor on colors. Anne Design handles the letters. I am enjoying this, but let's see what my notes say. It feels big, but also it suffers from the same thing that all the recent Milestone stuff has suffered from, and that's it. It just feels choppy. It feels choppy because we don't really have enough um, Milestone books and properties coming out to really fully flesh out the story. So in order to move it forward at a decent pace, I guess, we're really fast paced here, which ends up making it feel a little bit choppy. So, anything to add, Rocky?
Sorry, I was just momentarily distracted there. I don't have much to add. I will say this that this is the third of what's I understand to be 4 issues, and
Yep.
there's a lot. There's so much crammed into this issue. We get the origin for a central character. We get introduced to Duo again, which is a milestone characters that we loved when we reviewed the 4 issue series about 2 or 3 years ago. There's so much story packed into this one issue alone that and you and I have talked about it that there's such it's this is such a rich universe, the Milestone universe. It just needs more. I just wish it had more comic books in order so it could grow and feel a little bit more organic, because it does feel a little bit rushed, because these characters I think are 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 uh, are they're really good characters. I think they would be even better if they had a little bit more time, a little bit more space to move around in, and because I don't think that they're appreciated as much as they could be, because there's a lot that happens in this issue, and it's just too much to go into. This felt literally you could have had this issue alone. You could have had four issues, and it's just
Yeah.
incredible how much
Agreed.
happens in this issue. And let's just say that if you want a lot of bang for your buck, like you did back I remember in the 70s and early 80s, this is this comic book sort of reminds me of that. It reminds me a little bit of a sort of the Bronze Age comic where you'd get more substance in your comic. That's what this is, and it's amazing how storytelling has changed. But in any event, I like it. I just wish it was. I wish it had a little bit more. I just felt it. I wish it had a little bit more. Maybe more clarity and more issues to tell the story it wants to tell.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it just feels crowded. It's yeah. You could any number of ways to too fast paced, too crowded, not enough room to breathe. Yeah, basically, kind of, we're both sensing that. So, but you're right. You do get a lot of bang for your buck if you pick up all the milestone stuff. All right, up next we have Batman and Robin Year One, number 4, co-plot by Mark Waid and Chris Somney, written by Mark Waid, art by Somney, colors by Mateus Lopez, letters by Clayton Cowles with Chris Somney. So Somney did some of the sound effects probably. Um, Probably my favorite issue of the series so far. Um, really like the relationship between Bruce and Dick that's being explored here. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Uh, yeah, I do too. It's funny. It's a great time to be a Batman and Robin fan. We got Batman and Robin here being told with the early years with Mark Waid and uh, and Chris Samney, and then of course we got Batman and Robin being told by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and that's an excellent series. And that's told with Damien, both excellent series. And this is the early years. This is a young Dick Grayson in Batman, and I love the development. I'm intrigued by this general character. We get a little, we learn a little bit more about this new general who has come into Gotham City, and we learn about his his youth growing up, very dysfunctional relationship with his father. Clearly got some issues with his father, and there was an interesting scene where he's got his father in a wheelchair and he's overlooking Gotham, and he's talking about his father and about how he's better than his father, and he even alludes, or you get the sense that maybe he's going to push the wheelchair off the building. But as he tells his father, no, he wants his father to see that he's become a better man than he ever did, and accomplished more than he ever did. And so right away you see that this general's got something to prove, not only to himself but perhaps indirectly to his dad. So he's got some daddy issues, to say the very least. Meanwhile, we got Family and Social Services checking in on Bruce Wayne, because this is relatively within within the year that he's adopted Dick Grayson, so they're checking out that, and there's a potential love interest there with the social worker. And I like the interplay there. I love the character work. Alfred and Bruce and Dick Grayson they got to play along and sort of like fool the, you know. Obviously, Children and Family Services probably wouldn't take too well if they knew how Bruce Wayne was treating his new adopted son in terms of what their nocturnal activities were. It's just done very well, possessing a high degree of verisimilitude. Give and The dialogue is excellent. The art, Chris Samney's art, it really sets the tone and the mood. It's perfect for, you get a sense that this is sort of like a story that's taken place in the past, but it's really really good, and it's amazing how it can feel different. It can feel so different than the Batman and Robin story told between Bruce Wayne and Damian in the with Philip Kennedy Johnson, and it's yeah, it's really good. And I gotta say that the battle between Batman, when Batman confronts the General and kind of kicks the General's ass and makes and sort of embarrasses the General, and how by delivering a crate full of bats. I mean, it really worked, and boy does it piss off the General. But you can know it's I love how it's Batman setting the tone here. It's Batman, telling the General, get the hell out of this city or I'll be back. And the General is basically saying challenge accepted. And I just like it. It's action packed. It's great, and it ends with, it ends with God forbid, Dick Grayson having to start school, which he doesn't want to do in the first Monday in September. And so it's very well done. It's very well done, and definitely it's one of my top picks for the week for sure. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's not in my top five, but it's the best of I think of the series so far, and it has that classic Wade Somney feel. And yeah, again, I just love that it's not the same old. I wrote it. I put it down in my notes. What did I? Let me read what I wrote here. Yeah, the friction between Bruce and Dick remains, but the relationship is evolving. It's not the same old holy corny Robin, right? Like think about when Robin, was first around, and how people know of Robin from the Batman 66 TV show. You know, holy mothballs Batman, holy this Batman, holy that Batman, where he's just always like, oh wow, gee golly. Um, and we're going back to the earliest days of Dick Grayson here, of being Robin, and he's like a real person. He's not this caricature, and so that's good to see. That's great to see, actually. All right, up next we have Nice House by the Sea, number 5. James Tynan is the writer. Alvaro Martinez Bueno on the art. Jordi Belair on colors and world design handles the letters and additional design. And I sound like a broken record when I talk about this book. The character dynamics are fantastic. The story is intriguing, but invariably when I'm reading it, I struggle to know who the characters are because it's such a huge cast of characters, and I'm constantly having to go and research. Wait, now who's this person that's talking, and whatever, and that's completely on me that I don't have a good understanding of who the character, the first cast of characters from Nice House by the Lake. I just don't have them like committed to memory. And so every time one of these issues comes out, I'm trying to remember, wait, who's who and what have you. Um, but all that being said, I'm still really enjoying this. I just know that if I, and I've said this before, again, I sound like a broken record. If I go back and I reread Nice House by the Lake, in one sitting, I'm going to have a better idea of who those characters are. Maybe I will be able to commit them to memory. And I'll get more out of these stories. And I need to do that. I just haven't. I just haven't done it yet. So it's totally on me. Uh, but yeah, I feel like you have a better, like your head wrapped around who these characters are a little better than I do. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Well, I really like it, and I would anybody who likes the Beast games or elimination games or the Survivor. You want to read Nice House on the Lake, and you certainly want to read this second chapter of Nice House by the Sea. There's different factions of people. There's aliens. We have an alien named Walter who chose 12 people to survive an apocalypse that his alien race would inflict upon the human race. And then there's another alien from the same alien species, Max, who chose his slash her 12 humans to survive. And but there's multiple enclaves. There's various enclaves around the planet that will ultimately be only one will be chosen to survive and basically leave Earth. And so this Nice House by the Sea, there's this one character named Oliver who's interacted with the people of the Nice by the Lake, and but he feels his compatriots, and he lives in the Nice House by the Sea. They feel betrayed by him, and they feel that he's feeding them information. And essentially, they're torturing Oliver. They're torturing Oliver, and up until now, or up until for the most part, it's been believed that Walter has been dead. Walter is still alive, although we kind of knew Walter was still alive. Uh, and so, even though Walter, the alien race who created who put these 12 groups of 12 people together for a Nice House by the Lake, at the end of the first volume, he was believed to be dead, but we know he was alive. He comes back and reveals himself here, and it looks like Walter and Max, the two aliens, are going to have a conversation with each other because at some point, and this is the central mystery for us readers, is which nice house is going to be surviving, the one by the sea or the one by the lake, and then there's other nice houses elsewhere, and there's other chosen by other aliens. Where is this going to go? How many more stories are going to be told, and how are they going to get along? And the rules of this game, and there really aren't any rules. All these different people in these different houses have different skill sets, and how are they ultimately going to get along, if at all? How are they going to compete? How many more of them are going to potentially die? Because arguably they can't die, given the rules of the game and the way it's set up. It's really, really amazing. There's too much to go into here. Suffice to say that for people that really enjoy, this is such a highly recommended read. I would say that this is, bear in mind that you got 12 issues of Nice House by the Lake, and this is the fifth issue of Nice House by the Sea. I would strongly encourage people to buy the first volume, read that, and sit back and enjoy it. Sip some nice hot chocolate as you're reading it. It's a great read, or some coffee, and then collect this series issue by issue. It's very, very much well worth it. And I love this. This is building to something. You can feel this is building towards something, and I never know what to expect from James Tinian. And the art by that you mentioned already by Alvaro Martinez Bruno is excellent, and of course Jody Belair in the colors, just it's amazing. Particularly the way she colors the flashbacks. Which always seem to have an apocalyptic feel, given the story content. So, again, I quite enjoy this. It always gets a recommendation from me. Sorry, you're on mute, my friend.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's fair to say that it's a very dense read. So again, if you put some time into it, you're going to be rewarded by a very rich story, and there's much more to come. There's much more to come than now that we know it wasn't just a nice house by the lake. That there's a bunch of these houses, and what we've learned about these aliens. Supposedly Walter didn't do it the right way. He just picked people that were his friends, as opposed to supposedly picking the best of the best to To do what? Yeah, we're not sure. Repopulate the planet after it's destroyed. Is it really destroyed? Is this all just an experiment? We'll have to wait and see. But I talked to Alvaro Martinez Bueno at New York Comic Con, and he didn't spill the beans or anything, but he just intimated to me that yeah, it's a very big, rich, complicated story with a lot of twists that people aren't going to see coming. So all right, up next, Titans 19. This is on my top five. John Layman is the writer, Serge Acuna on art, Matt Herms on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. I really enjoyed this. It made my top five based on the strength of Killer Frost. It was great to see her. I liked her characterization. I also love the way Serge Acuna drew her. Um, and she's gone back and forth. She's been almost more of an anti-hero lately when she's shown up more recently. She was on the Suicide Squad for a little while, and now she's actually a member of the Justice League, but she kind of loses control here, and you wonder why. Well, come to find out, Deathstroke and the Clock King, we know that they've been sort of pulling the strings and planning on getting revenge on the Titans. Well, they've recruited another sort of classic DC villain who's very underused, I think, because in a lot of ways, he's one of the more powerful. But they've recruited him as kind of a henchman, if you will, to manipulate events to cause these issues. And he is the one that caused Killer Frost to kind of spin out of control. And it's Psycho Pirate, who I think his look with the mask that only has eyes, like no mouth or whatever. I love the costume. Again, I think he's just a fantastic character. I've loved him ever since my first exposure to him was Crisis on Infinite Earth. Um, but I just think he's a fantastic character. So now that the Titans have had something else thrown at them, and they're like, oh, Killer Frost is kind of acting like what's her name did from the Fearsome Five on the previous issue. Remember what her name is? Why am I drawing a blank?
Uh,
Um,
from the Fearsome
but
Five. You mean the
yeah, last issue they fought the brother and sister from the.
oh,
I thought
Mammoth and Jinx, or
yeah, was it Jinx? Is that
his sister?
yeah? Is that what his sister's name is? I can't remember. Anyway, but they realize that she's acting out of character, like especially because she has been more heroic. Um, Shimmer, that's her name.
Shimmer.
Shimmer. Yeah. I remember the Fearsome Five. But anyway, they realize, hey, this is interesting. She, just like Shimmer was spinning out of control, like she's spinning out of control, like what's going on? So they have some sense that maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Deathstroke and Clock King know that someone on the Titans has been a little unstable as well, and it's Rachel, right? It's Raven, because she just recently has had sort of the two sides of her personality merge, and she's still in a lot of ways discovering like who she is and getting her emotions in check and what have you. But it doesn't seem like those villains are going to let that happen, right? They're like, hey, Psycho Pirate, now now's the time before she can even kind of get stabilized and manage her emotions. Now's the time to attack her, and so they're thinking that they might be able to sort of tear the Titans apart from the inside. So it's interesting, and I'm pretty sure that I put this in my notes. Yeah, it's going back to the feel of the original Titans. And I by that I mean the George Perez and Marv Wolfman Teen Titans, um, the all new Teen Titans as they were called, um, or the new Teen Titans. But what I mean by that is so much of the character and story that they established was all about the relationships between the teammates. It was very kind of soap opera ish, and that's part of the reason that it worked and it was compelling and it kept people coming back month after month because you want to see what was going to happen. And so that's what Layman that feels like that's what Layman is being inspired by here. And again, the Serge Acuna art I thought was just fantastic. I mean, I've enjoyed the Pete Woods art as well. I don't know if Pete's just taking an issue off or what have you. But man, I just thought the art in this particular issue was really really strong. So yeah, I thought this was a really strong um, issue. And man, what a contrast between what we're getting in the Layman era in only a few short issues, as
Yeah,
opposed to what we had in the Tom Taylor era, where
yeah.
it wasn't that what Tom did was bad. You know, it was very, very different, but it
It was
it didn't feel,
boring.
there was never a sense of tons of action and a sense of like story momentum, like story moving
Yeah,
forward. We have a lot of story momentum here. Like
yeah,
we're privy to what the villains are planning, and so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. In terms of Psycho Pirate trying to make Raven lose control, but we know that's the plan. So we have these expectations. Oh, that's not going to be good for the Titans. What's going to happen? We never had that in the Tom Taylor run. We didn't know what was going to happen from issue to issue. Um, Other than apparently it's not going to be a ton of action. I don't know. It was the Taylor run was so weird. Um, and this is just feels so kind of traditionally superheroic. Like in addition to feeling traditionally new Teen Titans with all that relationship drama that I'm talking about, it feels traditionally superheroic. That there's action and threats and villains making plans and I'm really enjoy. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed Titans this much.
yeah.
It might be, and don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest Titans fan in the world, so I haven't read like all the eras of Titans. I've never read the Jeff Johns Titans run, which supposedly is like really good, and a lot of people love it. Say it's their favorite era of Titans. I've never read that, so I can't speak to that. But I did read the Wolfman Perez run and loved it. And so, this is kind of reminded me of that in terms of just my enjoyment of the series. So, uh,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's funny because on the one hand, part of me, I'd say 10% of part of me, I'm thinking, well, you got Deathstroke once again trying to take out Teen Titans from behind the scenes. But instead of planting Terra like he did in the Judas contract, he's going to be utilizing different methods. And in this case, it involves Psycho Pirate and other machinations. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. It's a fun read, and I like it. And so, even though on the one hand it might seem a little bit unoriginal, on the other hand, the way John Layman is approaching it, it actually works. And I'm looking forward to how the hell is Psycho Pirate going to try to control Raven of all people? Good luck with that. Be very careful, Psycho Pirate. I almost feel sorry for Psycho Pirate, but then. I sort of like that's sort of inspired a little bit because Psycho Pirate is, I think, notoriously an underrated villain because this is a guy that's been involved in every crisis in some way. I think he's been utilized by the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, and he's got power levels that are potentially huge. And on the other hand, he's also been a character that's been used much smaller scale in smaller and he's been made a joke of in some stories, and yet he's been made huge in others. And so I'm really curious to see how John Layman is going to use him. We already obviously know in some way, but if Psycho Pirate can hold his own against Raven, and I see no reason why he can't, given his history, quite frankly, this might get pretty interesting real quick. And plus, what else has John Layman got planned here? Because he seems to be having a lot of fun here. He's having a lot of fun, and I'm having a lot of fun with him. But
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And again, I just go back to how different this era feels. And I'm never one to root for renumbering, rebooting, starting over with a new number one, because I think it's done way too much. But if ever but it does serve as a way to sort of delineate between various eras of books. So if there was ever a time to do it, they should have done it with this. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. All right, up next we have Batman, Superman, World's Finest, number 35, written by Mark Waid. Art is by Adrian Gutierrez. Tamara Bonvillain on colors, Steve Wands on letters. If it wasn't for action, this would have been my lowest rated book of the week. It ends with Floronic Man underwater, which is kind of strange. But what's interesting, like I was really thinking about this, like why am I not enjoying um, World's Finest? Like I was digging this when it was Mark Waid and Dan Mora. Like I was really, with the exception of the Mixius Pitalik story, because that just felt too Silver Agey to me. But other than that, it just felt so instantly classic, and I was absolutely loving it. And I think it all comes down to the art. This is one of these books that really kind of illustrates to me how important art is. And because I'm not a particular fan of this art style, the book's just it's not landing for me. It feels like a little bit like a chore to read. It doesn't have that classic feel. I'm not really interested in checking it out. It almost feels like homework to read. So yeah,
Nice.
it's unfortunate because there's probably a good story here, but I just can't get into it. So
Well,
anything to add?
yeah, I'm going to decidedly disagree with you. I think I don't mind Gutierrez's art at all. In fact, I think I don't. It doesn't feel differently to me. I think I just, to be honest, what I thought you were going to say, because I'm egocentric and I thought you were going to reflect my view, which you did not, is if it is that maybe because think that it's telling tales at the in the early years of the DC universe that aren't necessarily consequential that could be. And in fact, this story, it's kind of funny. Superman runs into Lori Lemaris, who's got a jealous husband. It involves Atlantis. It's Aquaman. He's the king, and his early relationship with Mira. He's in his early years as the king, and he's got there's a potential sort of betrayal here because there's the Sidian race and the Atlanteans, and the husband of Lori Lemaris is with the Sidian people, and you've got you've got political machinations going on there, but I didn't mind it. I don't mind the art. I think it actually works pretty well. I just think, quite frankly, that at the end of the day, there's just too damn much competition with this comic, to be honest. And I I didn't I read this last two only because there's so much else going on in the DC universe. I'm just not interested in this. But I think it's being unfair because I read it and I actually enjoyed it, and I think there's a good story here to be had. And Floronic Man at the bottom of the ocean, I want to give credit to the writer here. Um, sorry, yeah, Mark Wade. I think he's done. It is Mark Wade, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark Wade.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's doing the same things he's always done. He's done in the past. He's done. I mean, he's still planting seeds. He's rewriting past stories, so he has something to build upon in future stories, and present writers can have something to build on. So it continues to be a very intelligent and brilliant way of creating new modern day continuity by telling past stories with a modern day lens, just like he's done that repeatedly since he came to DC, and I think it works. And the Gutierrez art didn't bother me so much. Didn't bother me so much. And I will say this: this is one series that I continue to collect because I do think it does it always gives rewards. Because Mark, would it surprise anyone if 10 issues or 3 months from now we get Laurie Lemaire showing up in the pages of Superman? Probably not, because there's always Mark Wade, because it's Mark Wade. There's always seems to be a plan there. Whatever Mark Wade writes, uh, it seems to bear fruit somewhere down the line.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love seeing Lori Lemaris. I my first exposure to her was the Superman: The Secret Years 4-issue miniseries. I think from like 1984. I think it came out like a long time ago, obviously. But that was my first because I didn't read Superman in the Golden Age. I wasn't alive, or Silver Age when I think Lemaris had some uh, appearances there as well. So yeah, it was great to see her. And and that's the thing. Like I love Mark Waid. I don't know why this is not landing for me. So I can only assume it's because of the art. So all right. Up next, this one is in my no. This one's just outside my top five. It's Nightwing number 122. I'm still really enjoying this. Dan Waters on the writing duties. Dexter Soy on art. Veronica Gandini handling the colors. Wes Abbott on letters, and we get a look at Cirque de Sin. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I enjoyed this. I thought this is another one where Dan Waters. Dan Waters is doing. Dan Waters impresses me as much as John Layman is impressing me on Titans. I got to be honest. I wasn't really. I had sort of kind of taken Nightwing and Titans off my pull list. But damn, Dan Waters is doing a good enough job with Nightwing. It's fall, it's, I mean, just same old problem I've always had. Just when I drop some titles because I need to spend less money, I always seem to find a reason to, these damn good creative teams always have a way of sort of pulling me back in to, as Al Pacino said in what was that, Godfather Part 3, I try to get out and they keep
Get out.
pulling me back in, right? Uh, that's how I feel, but I guess it's a first world problem to have. Uh, we learn more about the origins of Olivia Pierce, who was the CEO of Spheric Solutions, and we get sort of her. Dick Grayson remembers her. Nightwing remembers who she is, and Nightwing tries to tell his half sister, the mayor, uh, uh, and also the police commissioner, that tries to tell her that this is who she is. She's really Columbina, who was part of the Cirque du Sin. But the problem is that Dick Grayson doesn't have any evidence, and the evidence he does have would involve him, probably he would have to reveal certain identities in order to do it. So he's going to have to find another way to get proof to show the commissioner and to show the mayor that Spheric Solutions is the one it's creating the problems in Bloodhaven, and also purporting to be the solution to the problem by providing military arms to the very gangs that they're supposed to be suppressing. And so uh, that's that's interesting. Now, the origins and of going back to the early days of Dick Grayson, and how the Cirque du Sin was actually, they were all captured at one point by Batman and Robin when Dick was Robin with Batman, but the only one to escape was Columbina, and now suddenly she's returned in the form of Olivia Pierce. So that was interesting. I thought it was very well done. I like the way that Jan Waters related it to the history of Dick Grayson, related to the circus, and so it makes it personal to Dick Grayson, to Nightwing, as opposed to Batman per se. And it feels, and it also poses a lot of very interesting questions. How did Olivia Pierce go from being Columbina and the Cirque du Sin? Why is she back as Olivia Pierce? Why Bloodhaven? There's a lot of questions, and I'm curious as to what's going to happen. I thought it was a very well put together issue. I think the art was really good. I got some questions. There's some things that happen in this issue I don't quite understand what they'll do with the larger narrative, but that's just Dan Waters planting seeds uh, as this particular story arc continues. I thought it was really well done, and I want to give full props to the artist, Dexter Soy.
Dexter. So
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, just absolutely excellent. There's one really great scene where it shows that Dick Grayson talking, or Nightwing talking to that commissioner and his half sister, and it shows his eyes as Nightwing, and then below that his eyes, the paneling his eyes as a younger Robin. I thought it was just excellent the way it transitioned from the present to the past, and told the story, and then the tone, and then the kudos to the colorer, Veronica Gandini. The tonal shift in the color as there was the flashback there worked really, really well, and just absolutely excellent. I thought this whole issue was just very well put together, and kudos to the whole creative team. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Is it Dan Waters that brought in Maggie Sawyer, the police commissioner, or she was already there? And it
Yeah,
was
I
that was
think you're
something
right.
that
She was
Tom
already there under Taylor's run, I think.
under Taylor. Yeah. So again, we talked about this when we very first reviewed the first Dan Waters issue. How we really enjoyed the fact that there's a lot of continuity between what Tom Taylor had done, and he's building on that. He didn't just throw it all out. Um, and the fact that I mean, obviously Melinda Zuko Grayson, or whatever, however she's hyphenating her name, Dick's sister, basically, as the mayor, that he's continuing that as well, because they're great characters, and as much as Taylor's run was really great, um, there there was so much he planted early that he never really paid off that much. Like it was like a big deal when we found out Melinda, the mayor was Dick's half sister, and that was kind of explained or whatever. But then he never really did. He didn't do. It's not that he didn't do anything with it, because obviously they had their relationship, but it. he didn't do as much as he could have with it. And I love that that Dan Waters is keeping these characters around and using them as part of the narrative. I always have a soft spot in my heart for Maggie Sawyer because well, two reasons. First of all, she was a big part of the Triangle era of Superman because she
That's right.
was
Yeah.
she was head of the um, sort of the super powered the part of Metropolis Police Department that dealt with supervillains and what have you. She wasn't commissioner of I can try to remember what it was called.
Special Crimes
Uh,
Unit, wasn't it?
yeah,
Metropolis
yeah,
Special
yeah,
Crimes.
yeah. At the SCU over at
SCU.
in Metropolis. Yeah, but then she also had a relationship with Kate Kane, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
The
anybody
wedding that
smart
never
enough,
took place, right? The wedding that
yeah,
was
yeah,
supposed to forcing
yeah,
Mark and Draco to leave the title or deciding to
yeah.
leave. Yep, ages ago.
So yeah, anybody smart enough to get with Kate Kane, they're okay in my book. So yeah, I like Maggie Sawyer. So yeah, Dan Waters is doing a fantastic job with Nightwing. All right, up next, this book is in my top. In fact, it's in the running for my book of the week. It's New Gods #2 from writer Ram V. Evan Cagle on art. Jesse Lonergan handles the art for pages 1 through 4, as well as his colors his own work. The rest of the book's colored by Francesco Segala, and then Tom Napolitano letters it all. Um, I just love what's being built here with Rom V. Now, one of the things that I realized, and I meant to look it up before we talked about it, and I forgot. Um, but I did notice in the solicitations for this when it was listed that it's listed as 2 of 12. This is issue 2 of 12. Now, I thought New Gods was an ongoing book when it was announced. I don't remember it being
Yeah.
announced as a
Well,
mini
Ramvi even
series.
said that. Well, he did say it was 12, but he says if it was good, he goes that he said that he did say that it would, if
It would go
people like
longer.
it, it would go on. He did say
Okay.
that.
Okay. Well, I hope it does because it's really excellent. And it leans into a lot of the things that Ram and I have talked about the last couple times he's been on the show, that he's been on to specifically talk about New Gods. Um, and it's mixing the old with the new. And he does such a fantastic job of that because, first of all, we're getting classic characters that were created by Kirby, that some that haven't shown up in a long time or weren't really fleshed out that well by Kirby. Um, but we're also getting new characters. Romvi's introducing new characters and new concepts. But all the new characters that he's introducing aren't necessarily new to the world. It's just they're characters in this corner of the DC universe that we just haven't been aware of, like ancient gods that don't really see the new gods as new gods, that see them more as usurpers and that sort of thing. So there's there's kind of this ancient legacy feel to the story, to part of the story, and that's kind of those early pages that we get, and then there's a payoff on the last page where we see that those kind of beings, those very powerful beings that seem to hold a grudge against the new gods, maybe because the new gods are sort of out there and living their lives and existing, and people are aware of them, as opposed to these older beings who seem to have been forgotten in a lot of ways, and there's resentment that's built up. So they're what seems to be going to be a situation where they're going to attack the new gods. So that's all fascinating, right? Because that builds into the legacy feel and the old time feel of the story, the ancient part of the story. That's the old, and then for the new part of the new God story that's being told here, we know there's a new God that supposedly was born on Earth, and we saw that child. I think it's a male child, little boy. We saw him fantastically rendered, gorgeous final page from Evan Cagle at the end of issue 1. So here we meet, in this issue, we meet his parents. We see that he's not really aware of his powers. Apparently, he and his parents are being pursued by forces unknown. And what we saw on that last page, that was just kind of a snapshot, was that little boy manifesting his new god's powers instinctually to protect himself and his parents. So who is this shadowy organization that's chasing after him? Um, what are their intentions? Not to mention, we know that Orion has been tasked by Highfather to go and kill this innocent little boy. And we saw last issue Orion go to Scott Free and say, "Hey, I'm a guy that follows orders. Highfather's ordered me to kill this guy. you're scot free, you're great at escaping, you need to go find this kid and save him from me. Like that dynamic is just like that part of the story. Like one brother going to the other and going, so I got to do this thing, but I need you to stop me from doing this thing. That's just a great dynamic. So you add all that in to Evan Cagel's amazing art, and go back to that page you're just on with Big Barda, Rocky. If you're watching us on YouTube, everybody, you can see it. The other thing that Ron mentioned the last time that he was on talking about Evan's art was how when somebody shows up in their costume for the first time, how it's going to be big and bold and over the top, but also how he's going to do kind of that Will Eisner thing of incorporating their name. And I love that. Like this is clearly Big Barda. You can see it right there, behind her in giant letters.
No
The
mystery
art
there.
in this book, yeah, the art in this book is just gorgeous. It's fantastic. And I often call out when we get books that feel really super heroic, and this one does feel really super heroic, that aren't using really primary colors. And I say, I don't know if it works because, you use primary colors and it really makes it feel more traditionally super heroic, and that's what should be done, or what have you. Um, this is a case where it is more of a muted palette. The colors aren't, super bright. They're a little bit kind of toned down, but it works for this story. It works for this story so well with the mix of old and new. Um, that I just think it's fantastic. It's so good. And so yeah, when I saw that it was only 12 issues, I was like, wait, what? Who do I need to talk to? Like this needs to go on. So please buy this, everybody. Buy this book. If Romvi has more story to tell, we got to make this last longer than 12 issues. It's so good. It's so good. And the other thing that I want to mention is you don't have to have knowledge of Kirby's Fourth World to read this. Romvi's doing a good job of slowly, it's happening slowly, but he's doing a good job of kind of introducing characters, whether it be Metron or Seraphin or Orion or whomever, and giving you an idea of who they are in the current state of the DCU, and building them up as characters, and the relationships that they have with each other over time. So don't worry about that. Just read it, enjoy the fantastic art. Yeah, this is just it's so good. It's so good. So anyway, give us your thoughts on it, Rocky. What'd you think?
I thought it was excellent, and I particularly love how already we're seeing how the sides are battling up, are lining up here, because we got Mister Miracle, who's been tasked to try to find and locate this kid. Him and Big Barda are good, along with their very infant daughter Olivia, or Live Free, which is such a cool name, Live Free, and they're going to try to find this kid who is was left on the steps of a temple and found by this Kieran and Mira couple, and this kid is this new god, has all these powers, but somebody else is looking for the kid, and I thank you, Ram V, for bringing back Maxwell Lord. This is awesome. The last time we saw Maxwell Lord was in the pages of Wonder Woman, which ended with him being in a coma, and Maxwell Lord is back. And it looks like the person that revived and brought Maxwell Lord out of his coma was none other than Metron. Why wouldn't Metron? And I'm assuming it's Metron because whoever it was put the Metron symbol um, on Maxwell Lord's forehead, and Seraphan is working with Maxwell Lord, and they're looking for this child. Now, why would Metron be looking for the child? Why is Metron working adverse in interest to Mister Miracle, and is he and presumably the High Father as well? Or maybe he's working in conjunction with the High Father. We know that Metron, normally he sits on the Morbius chair. He's got, which gives him vast knowledge. So Metron is usually somebody that, if there's one person that usually knows what's going on more than anyone else in the room, you can bet it's Metron, right? Remember, Batman sat in the Mobius chair and just figured out that there was three Jokers back in the day. But I don't know. I will note that I don't see Metron sitting in the Mobius chair, so I guess he doesn't have the Mobius chair maybe in this series. But in any event, it's interesting that he's presumably using Maxwell Lord as a pawn or as an ally to find this kid. What's the importance of this kid? We have the new gods, but with the death of Darkseid and the new gods and High Father apparently, you know, in dire straits. Why do they want this kid dead? Why are they so worried about it? There's so many cool questions. Now, I will say, as a criticism, For me personally, I think it's always the just like in the first issue, the first 2 or 3 pages kind of takes me out of the story because he starts talking about these other characters and the history. I don't it does that doesn't work for me. It sort of takes me out after those and when after those pages are done and we get into the main story, it's so much more enjoyable for me. I wish I haven't really been enjoying the flashbacks to the past as you alluded to it, not as much as you have, but still the on the balance of things, the story, the main story is so powerful. The characterizations are so powerful. You talked about the color palette. It's exceptional. It's really good. The tone is right, and he's dealing with the humanity as exemplified through Kieran and Mira, who are the sort of like the adoptive parents of this child they're protecting. We see the humanity of Scott Free and Big Barda and their child Olivia Free, and we also have the godlike intervention of Orion and the High Father and Metron, and the supervillains of Maxwell Lord. And we know what Maxwell Lord's power set is. Now he didn't have a nosebleed in this issue. Remember, every time Maxwell Lord controls somebody's mind, his nose bleeds. Is Maxwell Lord's, is his power now exemplified and given godlike even greater power now because he was given more power by Metron? Exactly what's Maxwell Lord's power set here? I got so many questions. It's excellent issue. When you said, I got to add that when you said you don't need to know anything else reading this, you don't. But as somebody who has read other things, this I feel even more rewarded because there's Easter eggs in here too. And thank you, Ramvi, again for bringing back Maxwell Lord.
Yeah, I mean you're not wrong about that. It will be a richer story if you do have the knowledge. As far as the flashbacks in the beginning go, like I understand what you're saying because it feels like it feels disconnected in a way. But as the last page of this issue shows, with those characters that we saw at the very beginning of this issue show up on that last page, clear they're about to attack the New Gods or about to attack New
Yeah,
Genesis. Those flashbacks may become feel like they're a little more connected eventually when the war breaks out or what have you. So we'll have to wait and see.
yeah, good point.
uh all right, up next we have the question all along the Watchtower, issue number 3. This is from writer Alex Segura, art by Cian Torme, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. This one is just outside my top 5 as well. um, in my notes, I just have listed. It's a big story, much bigger than we expected. I said this after the second issue. It's Renee. She's very much a street level character. Renee Montoya. The question. She's she's the head of security on the Justice League Watchtower. Of course, you're going to be dealing with like cosmic level threats. Is she really the one to handle that? So I guess we'll have to wait and see if she can handle it, because we find out in this issue the big bad, the one that's been planting seeds and manipulating things behind the scenes and taking over different members of the Justice League Unlimited and having them do things against their nature, unbeknownst to them. It's Cyborg Superman, um, Hank Henshaw. So he is a very powerful character. Um, I have mixed feelings about him. In a way, I almost feel like he's too powerful. Like he's basically Superman, unleashed with a very cunning mind and great mind for strategy and what have you. And imagine if Superman turned evil, how difficult it would be to defeat him. That's why we have guys like Ultraman and what have you. Um, and so it's kind of tropey that Cyborg Superman typically gets defeated relatively easily, actually. So for Renee's case, because she doesn't have superpowers, really, I can't. She better hope he can be defeated easily, because this is. I mean, when you think, okay, we're going to match up two people, we're going to have Cyborg Superman and Renee Montoya. Who wins in a fight? Well, it seems obvious. Renee's not coming out on top, so we'll have to see how Alex Segura navigates this. Um, and even with the help of Kate Kane, she's not super powered either. Doesn't seem like she'd be a match for Cyborg Superman. So we'll have to wait and see. The Cian Tormey art is fantastic. So yeah, I'm really digging this. It's definitely Alex Segura getting a chance to level up um, Renee Montoya in perhaps in the eyes of a lot of people. So we'll see if he can stick the landing. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I still have a lot of questions because one has to, because the whole point of the Justice League hiring Renee Montoya was apparently because they felt she had some skill set that, and they felt that something was compromising the and wanted the Justice League Unlimited to fail. And okay, so if this was Cyborg Superman behind it all, I'll be honest. I don't know if that's that big a threat, okay? Because hypothetically, so what if Cyborg Superman takes over the Justice League satellite? You know that's only going to be temporary, because eventually you're going to have the entire Justice League taking him down. So there has to be more. Now there is more. The good news is, in my view, this is kind of related because remember that the murder there was the attempted murder of Ken Kawa, who was a member of the Challengers of the Unknown, and we're going to be reviewing the second issue of Challengers of the Unknown right after we're done reviewing this issue of the Question. And so, and we know that somehow the Challengers of the Unknown are manifesting potential some of the Omega energy of Darkseid potentially. And so the Challengers of the Unknown are sort of a question mark. They're potential dangers themselves, because they might have absorbed, or the Omega energy of Darkseid might somehow be part of the Challengers themselves. And with Ken Kawa being murdered here, what was the agenda of the cyborg Superman that shows up here in the pages of the Question all along the Witch Tower? Witch Tower, Watchtower. In any event, um, so I'm really curious. Because Cyborg Superman is always somebody who seems often he's aware of the bigger picture. I mean, he often sides himself with Mongo with uh, uh, bigger level threats. And it wouldn't surprise me, or Mongol. He sided with Mongol at one point. So I'm wondering if Cyborg Superman is aware of the Omega energies, if he's aware of the bigger picture as well. There's a lot of open questions that I think still exist here. And so this is a more enjoyable read for me, because I'm reading it in conjunction with Challengers of the Unknown, even though technically they're both standalone stories.
Yeah, I really, I mean, you're right. Like, how is and maybe Renee won't take him down on her own. Maybe it will be other members of the Justice League Unlimited. But then, back to your point, then why were they so adamant that she be the one? Like, they wanted her to figure out who it was. Okay, well, she accomplished it. Now, can she defeat him on her own, or will she need help? We'll have to wait and see. Uh, all right. Last book we're going to talk about in detail. You already mentioned it. Challenge of the Unknown, #2. This is written by Christopher Cantwell. We've got art by Jorge Fornes, Sean Isaacs, and Amin K. Nahalapan. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. and Matt Herms. And letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This is definitely in my top 5. I've got my notes here that say it's a very human story. And that makes a lot of sense, right? The Challengers of the Unknown, they don't have powers either per se, or at least they haven't in the past. Um, and that's the sense that we're getting, and the sense that we got in the first issue. But after reading the second issue, it kind of shines more of a light on that idea, because that theme kind of plays through here in the second issue as well. Just the humanity of these characters, and so we lean in this story to June, member of the Challengers of the Unknown, and the Ultivac. I don't know if I want to call it a robot. I mean, the robot with Ultivac, the robot with the mind, is how it was first presented, back in the Silver Age or whatever. But this idea of creating this robotic, this big giant robot that could fight, and it saw, in a way, it was kind of sentient, and it sort of had emotions, and it saw June as its mother and was always very protective of June. But then, because Silver Age, and because you got to tell stories and go crazy and over the top and constantly be topping yourself, eventually Ultivac turned on um, the Challengers and was like, oh, what does it mean to be dead? That's everything ends up dead. That's what you aspire to, and what have you. And it kind of turned against them, and eventually the Challengers of the Unknown had to defeat it, and they thought they had, but Ultivac has returned here. It's one of the anomalies that is being detected that supposedly is related to Darkseid's death. So we get a kind of an emotional moment when June is reunited with the Ultivac, and there seems to be something going on. The fact that these Challengers seem to be sort of intimately connected to these anomalies, and it doesn't make sense. And Mr. Terrific is trying to figure it out. So you have that mystery part of it, but the other part of it is each time one of these anomalies has shown up. The first one being that strange anomaly on Mars. Um, that was Ace that went and
Yeah, Ace
investigated that. I
Morgan.
think
Yeah,
so. Yeah, Ace Morgan. Yeah, and saw different versions of himself throughout the multiverse. And now June here with Ultivac. Um, what's interesting, it goes back to what I was saying before about how human these characters are, right? So there's something extraordinary that's happening with the connection that the challengers have to these anomalies that Mr. Terrific is aware of and trying to figure out. But when they actually, when whether it be Ace last issue or June in this issue, when they're actually in proximity to the anomaly, something happens to them that leans into an idea that's so very human. You know, Ace Morgan trying to be the best version of himself. June here trying to be a mother and what it means to be a mother and family and all that sort of stuff. That those are so inherently human ideas that lean into the idea of here are these challenges of the unknown. I mean, it's right there in their name. They've always put themselves out there to investigate mysteries and keep the world safe because they are living on borrowed time in their minds. Um, because they all should have died in this, you know, terrible plane crash and they didn't. They somehow survived. So hey, we're living on borrowed time. We should have died anyway. So why not go investigate the most dangerous things that we possibly can, um, because we shouldn't be here. You know, the odds are we shouldn't be here, you know, anymore anyway. I mean, it's so interesting that because you could swing all the way over to the other side, right? Like, oh my God, I came so close to dying. I'm going to live the rest of my life being super, super careful because I don't want to come close to dying again. Um, but no, they swung the other way, and it shows their predilection to being heroic and wanting to make the world a better place and that sort of stuff. So, uh, just really great characterization and really interesting mystery that's being established here by Christopher Cantwell. Just really really great. I'm typically not a fan of having multiple artists in the same book. Um, but I think it works here for the most part. You know, we get Jorge Fornes doing kind of the flashback scenes, and it does make it feel a little bit more old fashioned. And then we have Ammon K doing kind of the transitional scenes, and then we get Sean Isaacs when we have June sort of confronting Ultivac in the mountains or whatever, and it works really really well. So, yeah, I thought the color work was fantastic. The story is intriguing. I love the voices that Christopher Cantwell is giving to the challengers. I think he does a great job because they're not really, for all of them have been around for such a long time, they're not really characters that have been fleshed out really, really well, especially in recent years. You
yeah.
know, they showed up a lot in the Silver Age, but they sort of had that Silver Age characterization where they were just, you know, generic good guy. And so having a chance to kind of flesh them out and give them their own unique personalities, I think, is a good thing. And I think Christopher Cantwell is a good choice for that. So, yeah, this was another one I'm considering for Book of the Week. I thought it was great. What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I think for the first time, it feels to me, because I've read Challenges of the Unknown before, I've read past stories. This is the first time where I've ever actually felt that they're actually being elevated to a level where, I mean, we got to remember that Challenges of the Unknown, if there was a time when they had the potential to be the Fantastic Four of the DC universe, and in fact, in many eyes, they are. But they're not that popular. They're not the first family of the DC universe. They're nothing even close to the popularity of the Fantastic Four. But yet, in many ways, that's kind of what they are. But why are they special? They're just four ordinary human beings. I asked a question when I heard that Challenges of the Unknown was coming out, and I heard that this was the premise that they were going to be involved. The Justice League was going to use them to investigate various Omega Energy readings, etc. Why? They're just four ordinary human beings. Well, Christopher Cantwell, to his credit, he's answered that question. He through great character work and through psychedelic sort of like hallucinations experienced by Ace Morgan on Mars, through June's relationship with one of her creations, the Ultravac, we're starting to see that there's they may in fact be when Darkseid died, something transmuted within them potentially, and maybe they've changed, that activated a change within them. So in many ways, to use a Marvel analogy, forgive me, but Fantastic Four were bombarded with cosmic rays. Maybe the challenges of the unknown are being bombarded with omega energy flowing, resulting from the death of Darkseid, and maybe that's making them special, but also potentially dangerous. I also really think it's interesting, it's simultaneously annoying and interesting at the same time, that Mr. Terrific and Batman kind of know things that they're not telling Ace Morgan, they're not telling June. Why not? I mean, they even admit it. Ace Morgan even says to Mr. Terrific, I know there's some things you're not telling me, but I trust you. And I'm thinking, like, what? I mean, the Justice League sending you on these dangerous missions. You're only human, and they're not telling you everything. I'd be a little bit more pissed off if I was Ace Morgan, but he seems to kind of accept it, and I think it's because he knows intuitively that he simply trusts the Justice League and what have you. But I like that. I like that character tension. I like the reactions that I get when I read it. So even though I might sound I'm a little bit miffed, I'm miffed in a good way because I'm invested in this story and I'm pissed off for some of these characters saying, I would give Mr. Terrific a bitch slap if I was Ace Morgan and say, hey man, look, you smart ass. You got a high IQ and you're gonna keep all this close to the vest while I get to be your guinea pig and you're keeping me incarcerated. And now you're gonna throw June in with me because you don't like what happened, and you're sending us on these missions here. We're not your guinea pigs. Um, but I like that. And Christopher Cantwell, it's to his credit that I had that reaction reading this story and I really enjoyed it. And again, I'm really intrigued. It's fascinating. I love the DC All In special when Darkseid died, and I want to know about Darkseid and his Dark Legion, and he's there with Booster Gold in the Absolute Universe. But you know what? This is a slow burn, and as much as I want to know that full story right now, I'm really enjoying the journey getting there. It's a slow journey, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the first time you mentioned elevating these characters. It's the first time we're getting, okay, who is Ace Morgan? Who is June Robbins? As opposed to just, they've all been sort of interchangeable. They've only had the barest amount of characterization. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But between this and what happened in Black Lightning, the Justice League, the sort of the leaders, if you will, of the Justice League Unlimited, they're not exactly coming across as they're not putting their best foot forward. Mr. Terrific keeping all these secrets, the Trinity heavy-handed with the handling of Jefferson Pierce and his family. Like, yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with you. Like, and this is the thing that but this bugs the hell out of me when it happens, whether it's in live action, a movie, or a television show, or even when I'm reading a book. Um, it happened every episode of Three's Company. It's when things go wrong because people don't tell each other the things that they need to know.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's that simple. Like if you just would have been honest, if you just would have told me I'm involved in this situation, you just would have told me what was going on. I could have told you what I knew, and then we could have, stopped this terrible thing from happening. But no, you kept it all to yourself for reasons, not good reasons, but reasons, and now we're in a mess, right? So, Mr. Terrific, why are you not telling that they're connected to these anomalies? Why aren't you saying, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about this, maybe we can figure out why they're connected? But then we wouldn't get this story and it wouldn't be as compelling, we wouldn't have the mystery or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, that does it for the books that are coming out this week. Now, Catwoman was originally supposed to be coming out this week, as well as Wonder Woman, but they got pushed a week. So those will be, even though they were in our press kit for this week, they're not coming out till next week. So that's Wonder Woman 17 and Catwoman 72. So look for those next week. As far as collections out this week, we've got DC's Finest Supergirl, the Girl of Steel. So that's in the DC Finest Collected Edition line, where it's just collecting some of the most iconic Supergirl stories, all in one volume. So if you're so inclined, if you're a big Supergirl fan, you should probably check that out. 608 pages for $40. Obviously, it has her first appearance. It's got issues of Superman in there, Adventure Comics, Superboy, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. So it's definitely Silver Age stuff that are early appearances of Supergirl. There's also Swamp Thing by Mark Miller and Phil Hester Omnibus. That's a huge book. It's got 896 pages. Collects Swamp Thing Volume 2, issues 140 to 171. A lot of big concepts that show up for Swamp Thing in that run. Also, Blue Beetle Volume 2, Forever Blue. That's the Josh Trujillo run. Finishes up that run, issues 7 through 12, and then Kneel Before Zod trade paperback. That's the Kneel Before Zod, the entirety, I believe. Yeah, it's all the issues 1 through 12, 200 pages, written by Joe Casey, Dan McDade on art. Was a little up and down, but ultimately it did what they intended it to do, which is return Zod to his villainous roots. Um, Even though I tend to agree with Rocky, like Zod with a wife and a son is a little more interesting than this. Feels a little mustache twirling, like they've
Yeah.
returned him to. Like I'm not saying they didn't need to find a way to make him more of a bad guy and not be trying to establish a new Krypton and trying to learn how to farm. That's not interesting for Zod. Um, but I missed. I think it's a good him having Ursa and having Lore as his son in his as supporting characters in any story he's in brought a different, more interesting dynamic. So
Yeah.
anyway, those are the collections that are out this week. If you're so inclined, also facsimile editions out this week. I think it's Batman 608, which is the second issue of the first Hush series, or Hush story arc, however you want to describe it. Art by Jim Lee, written by Jeff Loeb, or what have you. And then continuing the reprinting of all the Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think we're up to issue number 10 now, out this week, which it's so crazy to me that Crisis has been, it was so long ago, like that now they're 40 years, Rocky. This is going to be the
Yeah.
40th. This year's going to be the 40th
It's
anniversary of
crazy,
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
man.
Bought it off the rack, read it.
Yeah.
It was, I was about 10, 11 years old at that time. So
Yeah.
it was, for me, it was my first exposure to a lot of those characters. I'd not seen a lot of those characters previously, with my
Yeah.
few books that I could buy every week with my allowance.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of new characters that were introduced as well. I mentioned all those Charlton heroes that showed up in DC books for the first time. Lady Quark, Pariah.
Yeah.
Um, hadn't really seen too much of Harbinger or the Monitor previous to that. So,
Yeah. It
yeah,
was it
God,
was my first time crying when the death of Supergirl. First time I
that's the
cried
Supergirl.
reading a comic
Yeah,
book. I didn't
yeah,
care when Barry Allen died, and I still wish he'd have stayed dead. But I granted all my wishes.
that's
It
so
was it
funny.
was it was the one death that actually mattered, and at least it stuck for like 30 years before they brought him back in Final Crisis.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, but the death of Supergirl, and it's also one of the greatest, in my view, one of the greatest artistic sequences drawn by
Oh
George
yeah.
Perez ever, with Superman holding a dying Kara in his arms. That sequence is just absolutely epic, and one of my favorite George Perez sequence of all. When I did my tribute to when George Perez passed, I showed that sequence in my tribute video. I just love it. So it's just such a classic.
Yeah,
The ultimate in that.
one of the most homaged covers ever, along with
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man 300 and Spawn #1, Spider-Man
Yeah.
#1, and yeah, that Crisis #7. It's so interesting though that you had that reaction because, I mean, I thought it was very sad when Supergirl died, but I didn't have as much of a connection to her as I did to Barry Allen. So for me, it was the following issue 8, where Barry Allen died. That
Yeah.
was much like a jaw dropping. I was like, wait, what? And I thought that sequence, like the way his skin disintegrates and then his skull disintegrates, whatever. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I was devastated when Barry Allen was killed. So that's so
Yeah, well,
interesting. We had
I
opposite.
expected Flash to die because I had collected all the comics up to them, and they had hinted, they showed a
Oh
dying
yeah.
Flash in
Yeah.
the year leading up to it, like the whole
Yeah.
year
The
before, and
flashbacks.
so
Yeah.
I was waiting for that to happen, and so it didn't surprise me at the time, and I'm a little older than you, so at the time I was 15, 16 years old at the time when it
Yeah.
came out, so uh, it doesn't matter now, that age difference, but back then wasn't quite as
Yeah.
ranting or raving as I am now, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. They did have those flashbacks, and that was explained. When he was running so fast against the flow of the cannon that he was actually going back in time. That's why he
Yeah.
was popping up in the past, in previous months before the crisis happened, and
Yeah.
people saw him, and yeah, he was already starting to disintegrate. But yeah, I was still hoping he would survive. But I mean, the writing was on the wall when they canceled his series
Yeah.
350. Although it kind of needed to come to an end. They dragged that trial of Barry Allen out for like 2 years, and it
Yeah.
had be that title had become so boring. It was
It
so
did.
good from like 300 to 325, and then the trial started, and it just, yeah, it was the exact opposite of exciting. Like it was always amazing to me, and I was picking it up and I was reading it every month, and I even at 10, 11 years old, I remember thinking, how can a comic book about a guy that's so fast feel like it moves so slow?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and looking back on it, like that's been borne out over time that people look back at that era of Flash as one of the worst eras of the book. So anyway, we've totally gotten off topic here. Let's finish up with our books of the week. Um, I guess I'll go first. I always put you on the spot and go first. So let me go first. It's really between, well, I guess three books really for me. I think Fractured Spectrum was really fantastic this week, just for all the ideas that it's bringing to the Green Lantern corner of the DCU. I also think New Gods is absolutely excellent, and Challengers of the Unknown. And New Gods and Challengers, kind of for similar reasons. We're getting sort of older concepts that kind of have their origins in the Silver Age that are being modernized by great writers, in this case by Rom V and Christopher Cantwell, that are making the characters more relatable and more interesting in the context of really great stories. So, when I first read everything, I thought for sure I was going to pick Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum, but I almost feel like, man, I pick books by Jeremy all the time. The guy's going to start phoning it in because he knows we'll just pick his book. So I'm not going to pick Fractured Spectrum, even though I think it's excellent and VCan does a fantastic job on the art. So I'm going to narrow it down between New Gods and Challengers, and I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with New Gods because I have a feeling that there's even better issues of Challengers coming. So I'll pick. I'll wait for an even better issue of Challengers to pick that, and I'll go with New Gods. Again, for all the reasons I said when we were reviewing it, fantastic art, mix of old and new. Yeah, it's so good. Uh,
Uh, yeah, well, I'm gonna go with Challengers of the Unknown.
there we
You
go.
picked New Gods because no, but I could have picked New Gods too.
Yeah.
But Challengers of the Unknown, they both have a lot in common because I think that both of them deal with questions of godhood, new gods, Omega energy. Also with a lot of humanity. There's a lot of divinity, humanity, character work, and there's a lot of drama there and a lot of questions, interesting questions, and both of them relate to questions that we have about where DC is headed, because of with tied in with the absolute universe, tied in with the post death of Darkseid. A lot of great stuff here and grounded in character work and great art. So yeah, it's yeah, two great titles. And what I like about it is that they're both new titles, and one deals with relatively new characters that deserve some attention, and same with New Gods. So this is really quite. This is quite nice. This is a wonderful, wonderful, pleasant surprise. I'm so glad that these are really, really good titles because, in my view, a lot rides on these titles in terms of DC moving forward to likely. I'm anticipating the next big DC event is likely going to involve something to do with events that take place in one of these titles. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, we've been told multiple people have said it. Joshua Williamson has said it. Scott Snyder has said it. That New Gods is the book to be reading to sort of discover what's going on or what happened with Darkseid and what have you. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, so neither one of us picked Fractured Spectrum. I guess Jeremy, you suck. You need to step it up. You're trying to rest on your laurels. How dare you? No, I kid. I kid. It definitely was worthy of a pick as well. But
It was, yeah.
well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining as always. Again, apologies, it's coming out a day late. But don't forget to leave comments below. Let us know what you thought of this week's books. Um, Head over to Rocky's channel if you're listening to the audio only. Just head over to YouTube, comic space boom exclamation point. Once you're there, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when new content is coming out. Also, while you're at YouTube, go ahead and head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel as well. Just do a search for the Comic Source, subscribe. That's where all the interviews and all the other coverage, our indie spotlight every week comes out. Again, like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate the support. So That's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget, if you want to listen to this audio only, the Comic Source is available as a podcast as well, audio only. Just go to wherever you get your podcast, whatever app or platform you prefer. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And that's going to do it. So we appreciate you joining us as always. We'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.